All right, guys, real quick, we're going to get right into this. This is a Ukraine-Russia video. To start with, I'm going to introduce you to Richard Barris, who is a United States Army Special Forces operator that is now a statistician. He also runs big data polls, which by every mathematical metric is the most accurate pollster in America. And I've been listening to him for a while. I can tell you from experience, this man is pure gold. And he's about to give you some commentary following a video from a Ukrainian media source from a few years back. Go ahead and take a listen.
Тому що Донбас взагалі регіон, який, це не просто депресивний регіон, розумієте? Там настільки великий комплекс, таких грона проблем, і головніше, наприклад, тому, що там просто дика кількість абсолютно непотрібних людей. В економіці, повірте, я абсолютно свідомо про це говорю. От якщо брати навіть чисто Донецьку область, там приблизно 4 мільйони населення. Ще не менше 1,5 мільйона, там просто зайвих людей. Що хочу сказати, нам не треба розуміти Донбас, нам треба розуміти взагалі український національний інтерес. А Донбас треба просто використати як ресурс, який треба, відповідно, з приводу...
You don't have to speak the language to understand what he just said. There were enough conjunctives in that sentence to understand that, even if you just speak English. And by the way, the definition of that is words that sound like other words from another language because they have a root source.
Розуміння Донбасу. Мені здається, що, в мене немає зрозуміння жодного рецепту, що тут можна зробити швидко, але найголовніше, що треба зробити в даний момент, як це
там жорстоко не прозвучить,
є певна категорія людей, яких треба просто вбити.
There's a certain category of people that must be exterminated. Yeah, thank you. That's cognitives, right. There's a certain group of people that must be exterminated. I don't have a recipe, but even though it sounds cruel, we're just going to have to admit that there's a certain group of people that must be exterminated. Does that sound familiar to you in the least, ladies and gentlemen? That is fascism. Fascism is a system of government, but that is the unique Nazi twist on fascism. I thought Nazis in Ukraine was just Putin propaganda. Putin propaganda that you can find in the BBC, the Jerusalem Post, the Daily Mail, the Telegraph, blah, 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 and on and on and on. 7 years ago, you could find Western media outlets internationally, all over the world, reporting on Nazis in Ukraine that want to exterminate these people. And your tax dollars have been funding it.
All right, I wanted to start with that clip because I just need to shock you. I would like to shock you out of this insane media spell that's been kind of cast over America and over Europe. It is absolutely just insane. Anyway, it may be hard for you to understand, but the same people who lied to you about masks, about lockdowns, about COVID deaths, and about the efficacy of the Pfizer shot and a multitude of other things are now lying to you yet again. Please just listen to what these people have to say.
And if you know people around the world, not listening and getting all of your information through a Western media filter, then you know that there is an untold story here. You know that sending those tax dollars over to Ukraine are not going to be used for humanitarian purposes. We're going to show you what your money has been doing for 8 years.
Тому що у нас робота буде, у них немає. У нас пенсії будуть, у них немає. У нас піклування під дітей, під людей, під пенсіонерів, під дітей буде, у них немає. У нас діти підуть до школи, до дитячих садків. У них вони будуть сидіти в підвалах. Бо вони нічого не вміють робити. І саме так ми виграємо цю війну.
We will have jobs, they will not. We will have pensions, they will not. Our children will go to schools and kindergartens, theirs will hide in the basements and cellars. Think he was joking? That's Joe Biden's boy right there. You think I'm kidding? That's Barack Obama's boy right there. That's Maria Yovanovitch's boy right there. That's Victoria Nuland's boy right there. That's Ambassador Taylor's boy right there. This is who they installed after the CIA-led coup that ousted a democratically elected president. All of the Trump impeachment trial witnesses, that's their boy. They tell you they're over there, Maria Yovanovitch with her crocodile tears. I was just trying to stop corruption and the big bad Donald Trump targeted me because, I don't know, I guess because I have a female body part. Okay, sure. This is Christina, 23 years old, and her daughter Kira, who became the symbols of the Donbas suffering in the summer of 2014. Beautiful woman, isn't she? Look at how adorable that little girl is. They were killed during Ukraine shelling. She never let go of her child, and I'm glad the graphic wasn't posted because it's not something I would put up on the show. A covered sheet body is one thing. This is another. This woman died with the baby in her arms like a shelled Madonna. Where'd that funding come? Where'd the funding from that shell come from? I hate to break everybody today, and this isn't some anti-US rant. You need to know both sides of the story. We paid for this woman and her 10-month-old baby's death.
And I wanted to add here that that deranged man you saw in the previous clip saying that he basically wanted the children of the Russian people in the east of Ukraine to suffer. Those are the people he supposedly is the president of. That man was put into power when a Russian person from the Donbas was a duly elected president. So I just want you to understand this. So the Ukrainians elect someone of Russian ethnicity from Donetsk, that is in the Donbas region, and then most likely our government removed him from power and put this deranged Nazi in charge. That is who our government backed.
And by the way, how could all of these conservative constitutionalists, how do they square their alleged belief in an incompetent and inherently evil government with these nation-building exercises? Rand Paul said it best. If you don't have faith in government to be competent and moral at home, how on earth do you have faith that the money that you take from your own citizens here to support such endeavors overseas will be successful? And I'm summarizing there what he had said. But you can see there's been a constant, yes, it declined, but they live in a constant, perpetual state of war. Imagine for a moment Joe Biden's elected, Trump supporters, and he just decides large swaths, territories of the nation are not loyal to him. They're not in agreement with what he wants to do with this country. So in the year 2021, he unleashes hell and kills thousands of Trump supporters. Yeah, he may slow down as time goes on through his tenure, but you're still dealing with, a dozen or so, a dozen to, a half a dozen deaths on a monthly basis. In a declining trend that eventually, plateaus at 24 a year. Would you say, you know what, they only killed 24 Trump supporters this year? I guess it's not that bad.
All right, so now the question is, why is our political class doing this to Ukraine? Why overthrow the government? Well, first of all, to prevent Russia from gaining power there. When it became clear that the people wanted to reestablish ties with Russia by electing a Russian president. Now, what do we get out of taking over the country? I'm about to introduce Robert Barnes. He is a big-time constitutional civil rights lawyer. He's involved in running some of the vax mandate cases that you might hear about in the news. He was a policy advisor to Trump during his term in office. He is very highly connected, and in his free time is a historian and political pundit. He is the most accurate political pundit that I have ever met or heard from. He is completely in a different league than even people like Tucker Carlson. His understanding of what's going on is multiple orders of magnitude greater.
And
It
he
all
came
comes
to
back. Ukraine
yeah,
has been the center of grift. It's been the center of a lot of things over the last
Absolutely.
20 years. If people
yeah,
want to
we
know
had a
where
major
Russia
problem
was
with them
going,
in
look at where Ukraine is now. Ukraine is now what they wanted to do to Russia, the poorest
Yep.
country in Europe, known for one of its biggest real exports, human trafficking. That's one of its biggest exports. Probably a
in New
coincidence the
York.
Clinton Foundation likes it so much.
So there you have it. That is, of course, in addition to the Biden grift that everyone knows about, which it's not just Biden. He's just the main example because he got caught. But we give American tax dollars to Ukraine. They give a certain amount of those tax dollars to their energy companies, and their energy companies put people from our political class on their boards and give them millions of dollars back. So it's a way to steal from you. So effectively, we are paying billions of dollars to support a Nazi regime that has been murdering the Russian people in a genocide in the Donbas region, so that our political class can steal more of your money from those tax dollars, and the Clinton Foundation can do a human trafficking ring. And I wish that were all.
We'll show you another element to apparently what your money has been doing for 8 years, and then talk about it in the context of all of the war lies we have heard and we have gone over now for 2 weeks on the show. Let's roll this.
Well, I only have a minute left. Let me ask you, does Ukraine have chemical or biological weapons?
Ukraine has biological research facilities, which, in fact, we are now quite concerned Russian forces may be seeking to gain control of. So we are working with the Ukrainians on how they can prevent any of those research materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces should they approach.
I'm sure you're aware that the Russian propaganda groups are already putting out there all kinds of information about how they've uncovered a plot by the Ukrainians to release biological weapons in the country and with NATO's coordination. If there's a biological or chemical weapon incident or attack inside of Ukraine, is there any doubt in your mind that 100% it would be the Russians that would be behind it?
There is no doubt in my mind, Senator, and it is classic Russian technique to blame on the other guy what they're planning to do themselves.
Whoa! Back up. Let's take this in pieces here. Are the Ukrainians funding their own biological weapons programs? Their biological research programs? No, you are. Dr. Fauci's buddies are designing new viruses in Ukraine. An unstable Eastern European corrupt, filthy, corrupt country is the safest place for a biological weapons program? A Western funded, let's get real here, ladies and gentlemen, a Western funded biological weapons program? Does this seem very wise to you, considering one of the major hegemonic powers in this country not 3 years ago leaked on accident a deadly pathogen that killed millions of people around the world? Nobody seems the least bit concerned about this. Ukraine isn't even China. Their infrastructure isn't nearly as sound as Chinese infrastructure. Their hold on the government isn't nearly as sound as China's. Their loyalties aren't even remotely unified. It was thought wise by people in a Western political class to give these people a biological research program? Is this for when I tell you these people are stupid, ladies and gentlemen, they are stupid. To the point, though, like I said on Friday, to the point where this is becoming a danger to us all.
And the people in the next clip I'll introduce a little bit later in the video.
So the U.S. invaded Iraq over WMDs that were not found, and that was justified. The U.S. admits to WMD in Ukraine labs, and Russia is not justified. Did I get that correct?
You didn't get it exactly correct, because of course they're not admitting to WMDs. They're admitting to laboratories, which they're not.
Research facilities.
Yes. Laboratory research facilities, which these they're not telling us what these were doing, and they're not explaining why, if they're such benign and benevolent things, nobody was told about them before. And they're not telling us either why it would be particularly concerning if the Russians were able to obtain control over them. So I think you're 99% right. The only word I don't quite agree to is they haven't admitted, at least they haven't expressly admitted, but you could take what they did say, what Nuland said, as practically an admission.
She was careful not to say weapons, as she said research facilities. But
No,
obviously we all know what's going on.
Yes, it's one of these lovely American bureaucratic expressions, collateral damage, all that sort of thing. Yeah.
Now I do have some other things I do want to talk about. I won't be able to get to it in this video, such as the actual plan that Russia is engaging in, which takes... it's modeled after what they did in Syria, which uses a combination of very measured military action with simultaneously with diplomacy to get their political goals. Also, I wanted to talk about how Putin is considered by the Russian people to be a hero, very similar to how Ronald Reagan was seen in America during the time that he was in office. So the last thing I want to talk about today is about how Russia was not actually the military aggressor in this conflict, but rather the Ukraine military launched an invasion of the Donbas just before basically forcing Russia to engage them in order to save Donetsk and Luhansk. Which is corroborated by the fact that the majority of the fighting in the eastern part of Ukraine, which is where all the fighting basically is, that's being done not by the Russian army, but by the Donetsk and Luhansk republics. Those are the Russian people of eastern Ukraine who declared their independence when their president was overthrown. Now, to help corroborate this, I'll be showing videos from the Duran. On the left is Alex Christoforou. He's an American who is currently living in Greece. And on the right is Alexander Mercouris, and he is a lawyer. He did a lot of some graduate work on American history. He did work as a historian. And together they basically run a political commentary. Specifically, they explain geopolitics from a realpolitik perspective.
In many videos over the past 3-4 weeks, we've constantly been reporting that Russia does not want to take action against Ukraine. They would prefer their security guarantees met. They would prefer things in writing, which would say that Ukraine is not going to enter NATO, and we respect your security sphere of influence, but they never got that.
No.
And we did say that if there was one thing that would prompt or goad the Russians into taking action, it would be an attack on Donbas and Lugansk. And around 4:35 in the morning, we got that. Throughout the whole evening, Alexander, things were really ticking up. The shelling, the artillery, rocket strikes, everything was really ticking up.
Yes.
And around 4:35 in the morning, the Donbas officials said, we need help. And things were escalating to a dangerous level, and it looks like Russia said, "Okay, we're moving."
This next clip has someone named Gonzalo Lira. He is an American who is a businessman living in Ukraine. He was in Kiev at the start of the battle. He is openly critical of Russia, saying that they have no right to invade or to make war. So he's very critical of them, but he is also just kind of fairly giving information concerning the situation on the ground in Ukraine, which for him is doable because he has contacts through his business all over eastern Ukraine and western Ukraine as well. So his perspective, even if some of his conclusions are a little strange, his perspective on the actual information on what is happening is very important.
And what's interesting is that in the Lugansk and Donetsk, where the battle is raging there, the people who are at the front are elements of the People's Republic Army of Lugansk and Donetsk, which I think is very interesting. You can draw whatever conclusions you will from that, but it is very apparent that those initial troops from those eastern regions are not Russian soldiers. It's very weird to be on Twitter and to be on the various social media platforms. I am not on Facebook. That's the one platform I just refuse. I just don't like it. But all the other platforms I see, they keep saying that the Russians are losing, that they're not reaching their objectives. And I look at the map, I look at the number of hours since this started and where they are located. And this is definitively located. This video evidence, and it's very clear that it's the Russian forces and the little landmarks are of these towns or cities or whatnot. And like I said, in Kharkov, it's firsthand accounts of people who are there, who see them out the window, okay? And so my thinking is that the people on Twitter, the people on social media, they're delusional. I do not know what they are, because they are swallowing nonsense and they're spewing out nonsense.
And I would add also that in this part of the front, it's become fairly clear to me that on the Russian side, most of the actual heavy fighting has been done not so much by the Russian army itself, but by the militia of the two republics, the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics.
So I just wanted to just let everyone know the perspective of the Donetsk and Luhansk peoples in this conflict, because their story is well known by the media, but the media at this present time is refusing to convey it. They're doing it purposefully and deceitfully.
By the way, and that's another
what
thing.
Does that
the
mean?
Nazis,
Year of
the
office.
Nazi thing is Putin propaganda, according to these people.
I know, it's insane. Even though you can find article after article after article from every range of publications the last 7 years, that I mean, this is not the Azov battalion was so bad in terms of neo-Nazis.
Right.
They were recruiting them from around the world. They were basically, we recreated the Taliban in Afghanistan and the Mujahideen in Afghanistan in Ukraine. The CIA was doing the same thing, except they were recruiting aligned neo-Nazis from around the world rather than Islamic terrorists, but basically the same sociopathic people, just a slightly different coloration of their viewpoints and ideas. I mean, you can just look at their badges that they wear. It's like, just see if you see any similar images in
the
what
Jerusalem
they're using.
Post did a great, was it 07, 08, or not even, no, I'm sorry. What is it? It's 2022 now. I guess it was like 2000. It was right after the color revolution. And so it must have been like 15.
Yeah, every other year, somebody would run an expose because it was such an obvious story. But otherwise,
it was
now they just try to pretend it. The what? Nazis? What? What are you talking about?
The same people who cared about fake Nazis for 4 years under Donald Trump that never existed are now all of a sudden completely silent in the face of real Nazis because, because there's a lot of money at stake. That's it.